The human-elephant conflict affects Mangalagama Ampara. Roads closed for over 3 hours due to protests. Heated debates in Parliament over the 2017 budget. Opposition questions budget proposal for 1 billion rupee vertical building in the north. Contradicting opinions arise over the renaming of the Samurti as Jana Isura. US President-elect Donald Trump meets incumbent President Barack Obama.
A very good evening to you. You are watching Primetime News. We are coming to you live from the Newsfirst studio here in Colombo. I'm Stephanie Lazarus.
And I'm Sandro Ferdinando. Let's take a quick look at your top story.
On to your top story tonight, the debate on the second reading of the 2017 budget got underway today. Here are some of the views expressed during today's debate.
The priorities lie elsewhere. And just to highlight some of those, digitizing the economy, rupees 15 billion. Exim Bank, 10 billion. Free trade zones, 1 billion. Export and FDI marketing campaigns for FDI, 1 billion. And as opposed to that, agriculture gets 450 million. There is a proposal to build a vertical building, construct a vertical building for mixed development which will include office space, recreational facilities and entertainment facilities, rupees 1 billion. Vertical building. I wonder why he says vertical building as opposed to horizontal building. Now, who wants a vertical building for all of this? Why 1 billion for one building? We didn't ask for it. Our people haven't asked for it. They want to get back on their feet. They want to do their farming, their fisheries, their animal husbandry. They want to get on with their lives. Give them something to boost that economy without putting up vertical buildings for 1 billion rupees. One building for 1 billion rupees. So who asked for this? Why doesn't the Minister of Finance consult the representatives of the people from those areas? Yeah, that obviously it is not for the people.
They speak about VAT and other taxes. However, we can clearly see now that the tide has died down. Who swam in the nude? The joint opposition is in the nude, and they are trying to cover it up using a bucket which has no base. The intelligent people can see through this. Mahinda Rajapaksa's government imposed taxes on Maldive fish, dal and sugar. In 2014, they reduced taxes, but on what? On dog food. It is no surprise that Mahinda Rajapaksa left the southern province and went to the northwest. During his 10-year term, he couldn't hold out his own area, and that is why he left. We took over a country and an economy with problems that you created. Our Prime Minister is bearing these burdens today. If you think that we took power to play a limited over match, you are mistaken. We are here to play a test match. We will play that test match as well.
අපි හරියට ඒ ටෙස්ට් මැච් එක ගහනවා.
කරුණානායක උදල්ලමතුමා සිංහලෙන් සහන පොඩ්ඩක් පෙන්නලා ඉංග්‍රීසි භාෂාවෙන් බදු ගොඩාක් පැටවුවා.
Finance Minister Ravi Karunanayaka gave some concessions in Sinhala and imposed heavy taxes in English. Tax on road rules. If you violate a road rule, you will have to pay a tax on the spot. The carbon tax, taxes for court cases and filing cases, the internet tax. They speak about giving tabs to children and the people are thrilled, but then you slap a 25% tax on internet charges. You are trying to control this situation by imposing taxes on people who use Facebook, social media and smartphones. The easy cash tax, tax on ATM withdrawals. Change the cover of this budget. It should read taxes for everyone, not benefits for everyone. You have also imposed a tax on teledramas. You may justify it in various ways by saying it destroys our culture. What is the fairness in taking 5 rupees from every transaction of 10,000 rupees? As public representatives, we receive an allowance, not a salary. However, they think of it as a salary and maintain the pension for MPs. However, you bring in a proposal to introduce a contributory pension scheme for the normal state workers. Why did you include a statement describing the current pension scheme as a time bomb? Didn't the Secretary to the Minister of Finance feel that this will affect him as well when writing this sort of line? If the pension scheme is a time bomb, then the MP's pension is a nuclear bomb.
විශ්‍රාමයට ක්‍රමය කියන එක කාල බෝම්බයක් නම් මේ മന്ത്രിවරු ලබන එක පරමාණු බෝම්බයක්.
මෙවර අයවැයේ පරතරය බිලියන රුපියල් බිලියන 635ක් පමණ වෙනවා.
The budget deficit is around 635 billion rupees. The total estimate is around 3,473 billion. I propose to the Minister of Finance to establish a high-level national committee to conduct a thorough assessment prior to approving money for projects over a certain limit. Funds should be approved only if these projects are beneficial to the nation. Some loans are maturing and we need to pay both the loan and the interest. We need to come up with 1,500 billion each year just to keep up with the loan repayments. If not, what happens? We will become a failed state.
පොලිය ගෙවන්න. මේක ගෙවුවේ නැත්නම් මොකද වෙන්නේ? මේක ගෙවුවේ නැත්නම් මේක අසමත් රාජ්‍යයක් බවට පත් වෙනවා.
Intellectuals have expressed their displeasure as the 2017 budget failed to focus on the malpractices followed in transactions surrounding the central bank.
A primary dealer in the markets, perpetual treasuries said to be owned by the son-in-law of Arjun Mahendran, is one party that is facing allegations over the treasury bond scam. Following the bond issue, the firm saw a staggering increase in its profits, and it was also revealed that it was using the names of separate businesses to make purchases in the share market. One significant revelation was that a company named Thurston Investments Limited was operating from the same address as Perpetual Treasuries and Perpetual Equities. Thurston Investment Limited is the third shareholder of the Housing Development Finance Corporation Bank of Sri Lanka, also known as HDFC. As per the bank's share listing published on the 30th of September, Thurston Investments Limited owns 14.15% of the shares of HDFC. In such a backdrop, the budget had proposed to commence a housing bank by merging HDFC and the State Mortgage and Investment Bank. As per the budget proposal, the government is to allocate 7.5 billion rupees to commence this bank.
So this is a matter that has to be studied very carefully, whether this has been carefully designed to help the people who earn monies in unorthodox forms, unethical ways, to legalize those monies. Finance Minister in his last budget introduced a capital levy on people who are owning huge mansions and houses that were inherited by them by birth. But we also in the same spirit expected that he would use, in the recent past there were instances where big corruptions were exposed, and at a state level, at the level of the COP in the parliament, and we expected the finance minister to introduce some measures to recover some of those ill-earned, ill-gotten monies into the government coffers. We don't see any such thing in this budget. So it is a careful evasion to help such corrupt elements to continue to operate in this country.
We have made a mistake here. If you look back at history, HDFC is not a bank. It was Sri Lanka's first ever building corporation. It is now known as the HDFC. The central bank made the first mistake by handing it a banking license. After that, it affected the share capital. No one can take the share capital from a building society. So what happens through this is, if the capital goes to one faction, several factions will come together and take ownership of the establishment. When the puppets are dancing, we applaud from the gallery. We can see the arrivals of the kings, queens and many others. We cannot see the puppeteers. With regard to this, what I see is that there are puppets in parliament while there are puppeteers who control them. As professionals, we need to understand who these puppeteers are and on behalf of whom they are doing this. Who are they trying to deceive? The people might still believe that they can be given a place like heaven from these deceitful acts.
Now, after watching this story on our primetime news bulletin at 7 p.m. on our sister channel Sirius TV, convener of the Voice Against Corruption, Vasantha Samarasinghe, shared the following views with News First.
Just as the finance minister announced a set of important points yesterday, I heard in the news today that a sum of 7,500 million has been allocated from the budget for the HDFC Bank. Likewise, 3,000 million has been allocated for the investors of the Golden Key Company. These financial institutions that went into disarray due to malpractices are now being rebuilt using the funds allocated for the people. The issue is, rather than putting those involved in these malpractices behind bars, they are providing them with incentives. What must be done is to bring those involved before courts. Over 10 billion is being used to either rebuild or develop these financial institutions. If such institutions cannot operate, the people cannot be held responsible. It is the duty of the central bank to look into it. This budget had been prepared to provide incentives to other financial institutions that are operating unethically.
Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa commented on the budget following an event in Galle.
No one laid their hands on the ETF or the EPF. For the first time ever, this government is attempting to do so. When companies want to buy bonds, they will release this money. They will lend it out at a low interest, and the companies in return will give back this money to the government at a higher interest. The vote is on the 18th. The joint opposition will vote against it. What is in it for the people? Some 60 odd rupees has been reduced for the people.
The Minister of Social Empowerment and Welfare has refuted a statement made during the budget speech indicating that the Samurdhi will be renamed as Jana Isura. Minister S.B. Disanayake notes that Jana Isura will merely be a program to eradicate poverty in the country which will function under Samurdhi.
Our aim is to graduate at least 50% or around 2.1 million of the population earning less than $2 per day to get a high income bracket by 2020. In essence, we will ensure that the income of the Samurdhi beneficiaries will be augmented with more opportunities being created in the job market. As such, to ensure that we reach our targets and have enabling strategies, we will appoint a task force to look into these issues. In fact, I would like to propose to rename Samurdhi as Jana Isura.
The Samurdhi program will not be renamed as Jana Isura. I'm not sure how this was interpreted by the newspapers and the media. What will happen is that the Jana Isura program will be initiated under the Department of Samurdhi and the Samurdhi officers and unions. The President has termed next year to be the year to eradicate poverty from the country. Jana Isura will be a key program that will be undertaken through our ministry next year.
Flow of traffic along the Ampara-Kandy Road came to a standstill for 3 hours today owing to a protest stage at the Mandalagama-Ampara area against the threat of wild elephants. Area residents request for steps to be taken to prevent wild elephants from entering their villages.
Residents of villages belonging to the Vaunathivu, Chenkaladi and Pattipola divisional secretariats in the Batiklo district staged the demonstration. The protest was staged demanding that the electric fence surrounding the village be removed and reconstructed in a proper manner. The residents point out that the electric fence being built at a close proximity of 100 meters to the main road has given rise to a number of issues. The residents say that the fact that their cultivating lands are situated outside the boundaries of the electric fence has given rise to many issues. The residents of the Pattipola Divisional Secretariat who participated in the demonstrations said that officers had notified them not to cultivate outside the boundaries of the electric fence.
මණ්ඩකලප දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ පට්ටිපොළ ප්‍රාදේශීය ලේකම් කාර්යාලය වගේම චෙන්කලඩි ප්‍රාදේශීය ලේකම් කාර්යාලය
The Vaunathivu, Chenkaladi and Pattipola divisional secretariats in the Batiklu district asked these people to leave this area, but these people have nowhere to go. From the time of the war, these people were farming in the Mangalagama, Keviliya Madua and Kulukunava areas.
මේ මංගලගම කෙවිලියා මඬුව කුළුකුණාව කියන මේ ප්‍රදේශවල තමයි.
අලිවැටක් ගහලා තියෙනවා මේ පහුගිය කාලේ අලි ඇවිල්ලා
An electric fence was constructed. During the recent past, wild elephants destroyed 84 houses. Afterwards, we staged a demonstration like this and demanded that an electric fence be constructed. The electric fence was constructed across our lands. Now there is no electricity in the fence. Our houses were on the other side of the fence before the war. Now the AG's office and the forest authorities say that the lands outside the fence are grazing grounds. These are our farming lands.
මේ අලිවැටෙන් එහා පැත්ත තනබින් කියලා. අපි ගොවිතැන් කරපු ඉඩම් තමයි ඒවා.
The divisional secretary of Pattipola arrived at the scene of the protest and held discussions with the demonstrators. A correspondent said that the protesters dispersed after the divisional secretary promised to provide solutions to their issues within the course of 2 days.
During the past 2 years, the president has made strong comments to protect the environment on a number of occasions. However, as more issues arose and as the officials responsible for the conservation of the environment failed to grasp the core of the president's stance, the president recently noted that those involved in forest clearing and dredging for sand mining must seek his consent in addition to obtaining permission from the relevant government institutions. Yet, if officials and institutions that must take action against illegal sand mining are not doing so on the basis of personal benefits or close relationships, it is not practical to impose the quote-unquote mandatory clause in the president's statement. The primary example for this is the destruction being caused in Digawapia. In December last year, this sacred ground of Digawapia looked like an island due to the illegal sand mining that took place on the banks of the Galloya River. This also resulted in the irrigation ways made for water to flow for many legal paddy fields in the area to break away. Around 500 acres of paddy land in the Nayanakadu area were inundated as a result at a time when the harvest was just about to be reaped. The method undertaken to provide compensation was strongly criticized by the locals.
Compensation for one group was overestimated, while a low estimate was given for the lands that come under the purview of the temple. All the paddy fields were flooded in one single flood.
Even after this disaster had taken place, rather than putting a stop to the illegal mining on the banks of the river and repairing the damaged banks of the river, the irrigation officials are making many visits to the Digawapia temple in order to seek permission that would also see the Digawapia sacred grounds also being flooded. The chief incumbent of the temple refuses to budge to their request, which aims to expand the anicut on the road leading to the temple. The motive of the irrigation officials is to divert all excess water on illegal paddy fields in the area onto the Digawapia sacred grounds. What is notable is that a parliamentarian from the Sri Lanka Muslim Congress is accompanying this group of irrigation officials for this project. However, what needs to be done is not lower this anicut, but to put a stop to all the illegal paddy cultivations that are taking place, damaging the banks of the river. It is indeed astounding that the irrigation officials do not understand this. In some locations, what can be seen are weirs and sand mounds instead of the natural river banks. A similar destruction is also taking place in the vicinity of the Timrigolla Forest Reserve in Bakmitiava. More details to follow on Action TV.
In more local news, the government, through the 2017 budget, hopes to increase tax revenue by 20% and gather a total of 1,821 billion rupees. Now, according to Reuters reports, the budget was made in a manner that will help reach the targets set by the International Monetary Fund when providing loans to the country. While the second installment of the IMF Extended Fund Facility will be released on the 20th of this month, the Executive Board of the IMF will convene on the 18th in order to finalize the matter.
On the 3rd of June, the Executive Board of the IMF approved a 36-month extended arrangement under the Extended Fund Facility for an amount of 221.85 billion rupees for Sri Lanka. According to Minister of Finance Ravi Karunanayake, this facility was obtained to bridge the gap in the country's balance of payments, which is the deficit between Sri Lanka's exports and imports. The IMF agreed to release this facility in 7 installments. When the loan was being approved by the IMF, a number of proposals were made by the fund with regard to Sri Lanka's monetary policy and balance of payments. Among the proposals made were implement a structural increase in revenues that facilitate a reduction in the fiscal deficit, reverse the decline in central bank foreign exchange reserves, reduce public debt relative to GDP and lower Sri Lanka's risk of debt distress, enhance public financial management and improve the operations of state-owned enterprises. The IMF presented a number of points that need to be achieved in order to achieve these goals. These points include fiscal consolidation, revenue mobilization, public financial management reforms, state enterprise reforms, transition to flexible inflation targeting under a flexible exchange rate regime, and reforms in the trade and investment regime. The IMF will convene prior to the second installment of the facility being released on the 20th of November, which will see 20.7% of the loan being released to examine the progress of the country in achieving these goals.
I do not have to elaborate on the dire straits many SOBEs are in at present. As such, comprehensive reform programs will be required to revamp such enterprises and to transform them into viable ventures. It is critical that the fiscal deficit is reduced to a reasonably sustainable level. All efforts should be made to reduce and contain pressure on escalating inflation and interest rates as well as exchange rate depreciation through macroeconomic stabilization. We need to strengthen our external sector with appropriate policies to create sufficient buffers. The burden of the public debt has been a matter of serious concern to this government. Carefully designed policies and programs will be implemented while not compromising the demands of the country's development. The potential implications of our unfunded pension scheme also create integrational complexities. This scheme is a severe burden on the government budget.
Is this budget one that is fulfilling the needs of the International Monetary Fund? Open for debate.
A debate took place in Parliament today with regard to Sri Lanka's former ambassador to Russia, Udayanga Weerathunga.
On the 20th of October 2016, Interpol issued an open warrant for Udayanga Weerathunga. There are a number of reasons why this arrest is being delayed. Since the necessary documents and information pertaining to this case needs to be obtained through the governments of Ukraine, Singapore and Hong Kong, it is being reported that this process will take time. In addition, we have requested assistance from Interpol in order to arrest him. We also request assistance from the Ukrainian and Singaporean police in order to arrest him. On the 6th of March, Udayanga Weerathunga's wife arrived in Sri Lanka and collected his normal passport in lieu of his diplomatic passport and went back with both passports. This issuance of passports took place in an environment where all these allegations were being levelled against him. You are now seeking the assistance of Interpol since the Foreign Ministry issued orders to the Controller of Immigration and Immigration to issue those passports. However, you could not catch the prey even when it landed in your hand. I can only give you a proper answer to that after consulting our Ministry Secretary. On 2 or 3 occasions he had mentioned through email that he will be handing over his diplomatic passport to the Ministry. However, he had not done so. It is not mentioned here that the Foreign Ministry issued such orders. The letter sent to the Control of Immigration and Immigration by the Foreign Ministry has been tabled. The Foreign Ministry has shied away from its responsibilities here.
Then
there is a problem. If the Minister tables such a letter, I will inform the Secretary immediately and I promise to provide an answer. I accept that providing him with another passport is a problem that we have.
ඇයි ඔබතුමාලා සිස්ටම් එක හරහා එම බලපත්‍රය අවලංගුවට භාජනය නොකළේ? ඔබතුමාත් එක්ක උදයන්ග වීරතුංග කියන චුට්ටක් නිකන් එහෙම නැන්නේ?
නෑ විශ්තුන දෙක යට තමයි ඔබතුමාට අහන්නේ.
එහෙනම් දැන්
I saw when the former president paid a visit to Malaysia, Udayanga Weerathunga was seated in the next seat to his. So that means he did use a passport to travel from his country of residence to another.
ඒම සඳහා ඔහු ගමන් බලපත්‍රයක් උපයෝග කරගෙන තිබෙනවා.
That passport has been cancelled. So if he is using that, it is through illegal means. Through the internet, we saw him seated next to various people at various places. However, he is being sought through Interpol.
In more local news, the Sri Lanka Nidahas Sevaka Sangamaya cautions that there is an imminent threat of the Sapugaskanda oil refinery being shut down.
මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශය පැහැදිලිව ලංකා කනිතිල් සංස්ථාවට තමන්ගේ
The Finance Ministry, after exerting pressure on the CPETCO to halt the Sapugaskanda refinery, has advised a committee it appointed in this regard to go ahead with operations in Hambantota. From today, through a report it issued, putting aside the report which it was issued earlier, they are planning on inflicting damage on the government of good governance. We have obtained all documented evidence. They have obtained a 200-acre land in Hambantota, and they have also made an environment for Sinopec, which is a Chinese company, to establish a new refinery. They are going ahead with the construction with the advice of those with Minister Malik Samar Wickrama and the Prime Minister. The most frightening aspect of this is the documents clearly states that it is mandatory that the CPETCO should purchase 70% of the product of the refinery. The closure of the Sapugaskanda refinery cannot be avoided under any circumstance if the refinery is built in the country. I have to clearly state that we have commenced operations to develop the Sapugaskanda oil refinery and to bring it under the sole ownership of the state. We do not intend to show opposition if there has been any steps to invest in a refinery that could export oil from the country, be it in Hambantota or anywhere else for that matter. It should be clearly stated that the private company is only investing to construct a refinery for export purposes. If there has been any sort of influence on those investors to do otherwise, then as the subject minister, I would like to say that we have not got ourselves into any sort of agreement to that effect. They can't get into agreements without the subject minister's permission. We cannot agree to something like that, and we have not agreed for anything like that either.
And before we wrap up, here's a look at how some of the representatives from Parliament reacted while the budget was being presented yesterday.